Have you ever seen anyone hurling an insult at rival Spurs fans using the Y word? Are you a Spurs fan who calls themselves the Y word? Are you a fan who thinks they're just being anti-Tottenham or even claiming it as a badge of honour? Well, think on. The Y word is an anti-Semitic term of abuse, a word used by Nazis as they rampaged through Europe, slaughtering millions of Jews. It's kind of akin to the P word or the N word. Would anyone you know use that at a football ground? Well, you wouldn't last long. So a campaign to realise what it means has been led by Ivor Baddiel and his brother David. They made a film starring Gary Lineker, Frank Lampard and Rio Ferdinand, and it triggered a debate. Ivor wrote a piece in The Telegraph ahead of Spurs' EFL Cup semi with Chelsea, a grudge derby, of course, which Eden Hazard asked for restraint from fans. So I caught up with Ivor to see how 7 years after he made that film, the campaign is going.
Real change takes an awfully long time to come about. Anyone who thinks change will happen overnight is wrong and ludicrous. However, I think slowly change is happening. So since me and my brother first made the film, the Y Word film, about 7 or 8 years ago, that was very much about creating a debate, raising the issue, because at the time it wasn't an issue. It was routinely in football matches for years and years and years. The chants of Yid Army, both from at Tottenham and by Tottenham fans, and other horrendous chants as well, just went on all the time. And it all stemmed from some unpleasant incident at Chelsea where someone was chanting it. I almost had a fight. I've never had a fight in my life, but I got riled and I had a bit of a argument with this guy, and I just said to David, this is ridiculous in the 21st century, we've got to do something about it. So we made that first film to raise the issue, and we did raise the issue, and we got people to think about it, and it caused a huge debate. Even David Cameron got involved at one point.
Mens rea.
3 days after he made that comment, he was on a TV show, ITV TV show with David. I can't remember what it's called, their equivalent of Question Time, sort of lowbrow Question Time, and I can't remember what it's called. And he admitted to David that he'd been hijacked by a Jewish Chronicle journalist, and he hadn't been briefed fully on the issue, and he just kind of went yes, or whatever it was he said. And unfortunately, I wish he'd said this publicly, but privately to David he said, no, I think it's wrong that they shouldn't chant it. At that time, and still to an extent today, but certainly at that time, loads of people had no idea that it was a racist term for Jews. That's the level we're deep. That's the starting point. They didn't even know that. They just thought it meant Tottenham fan. So that was the sort of starting point, and we raised that issue. We got people to talk about it, to debate it, and that was the aim then. Now, fast forward 7 or 8 years later, and you've got people in the World Cup just a few months ago being filmed chanting, Spurs are on their way to Auschwitz, Hitler's going to gas them again. I mean, for God's sake, this is the 21st century. It's ridiculous that that's still going on, and there's still similar chants, and there's just no getting away from it, no matter what the context is or why Spurs fans first adopted the term or whatever. I don't think I've seen a report of an incidence of anti-Semitism in football that isn't centred somewhere around Tottenham. I mean, the only other ones might be when Yossi Benayoun was playing, or a Jewish. Actually, there's hardly any Jewish British footballers. Joe Jacobson, I think, is the only one currently playing now. So there might be the odd, very rare incident with an Israeli footballer or an Israeli team. But that aside, it's all focused on Tottenham, and the issue has just got ridiculously complicated. And in the recent statement, so the World Jewish Congress have recently come out and said they won't tolerate. They think the use of the term should not be tolerated in any context whatsoever. And Tottenham's response to that is to say that their fans, both Jewish and non-Jewish, do not set out to deliberately cause any offence. And to me, the word deliberate is vital in that. I don't think they aren't deliberately trying to cause offence. I completely accept that, but the fact that they put that word in there means that they know they are causing offence. So, deliberate or otherwise, if you're causing offence, and we're not just talking about a little bit of offence. This is a term that was used by the Nazis. This is a term that was used by Oswald Mosley. This is a lot of offence, and given what it leads to, you think deliberate or otherwise, now is the time for them to stop, to have a real think about it, and stop using it. And to be fair, on Twitter, I've been interacting with some more, should we say, enlightened Tottenham fans who are of that opinion now, saying, look, yes, we understand the issue, we accept most of the points, yes, it is time to rethink it. And that's how change happens. I don't expect them, as I said, to suddenly go, oh no, we shouldn't be doing it anymore. They need to have their own debate. And that, over the years, that's what's really annoyed me, that Tottenham have churned out the same statement saying, our fans, there's no deliberate intent, and it's other fans, it's terrible anti-Semitic abuse. And it's got actually, yes, every club has to deal with its own fans and its own issues, but, this is about listening to Jewish people. It's not about club loyalties at all. It's about listening to Jewish people who say, we are deeply offended by this term, and we'd like you to grapple with it properly and to try and do something about it.
If you could imagine for one moment Tottenham was moved to Southall or Brixton, the very idea that the P word or the N word might be used is quite repulsive and would never happen. Do you think it's that the history of the Jewish community up until about a year ago was, let's keep our heads down and just sort of go with it, and now there's this new emboldened Jewish voice which is actually educating in a wider sense about Jewish identity with a non-Jewish audience?
The confusion around the whole issue. Tottenham fans believe, for Jewish and non-Jewish, and let's bear in mind that the vast majority of Tottenham fans are not Jewish. I think I read somewhere at best 5% of Tottenham fans are Jewish.
They are so non-Jewish that the accent is different away from home. I've been in a Spurs away crowd, and they're from Kent and Cambridgeshire and Suffolk, and they say Tottenham because they're not from London. They're hinterland. In other words, their ancestors, their grandparents were probably from East London, and they moved out to the countryside.
Yeah. But that's a vital point to remember, that what you've got is this is where the issue gets very complicated, and with things like the N word, there is a debate within the black community as to whether it's right to reclaim it or not. But the bottom line is it's their word to reclaim. So it's not non-Jews' word to reclaim. That's the vital issue, and that's where it gets very, very confusing beyond anything else. Because as I said earlier, I don't think they've done that to deliberately cause offence, but at best what they do is cause incredible confusion. And I've said this many times before, but if I was a Jewish Tottenham fan and someone came up to me in the street and called me a Yiddo, I'd have to say to them, well, are you calling me that because I'm Jewish or because I'm a Spurs fan? Because I need to know first before I know whether to be offended. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Also on that issue, it's not just if Jewish people wanted to reclaim the word, it's not just Jewish Spurs fans' word to reclaim. So if I want to reclaim it as a non-Spurs fan, I could. So it's not it has to move away from Spurs. And actually, I think if it does move away from Spurs, there are very few other areas in society where you hear that word anymore. So if you get it away from Spurs, you get it away from football, that will be a huge step towards eradicating it as a racist term altogether.
It's very regional. The fact, I'm talking about Aston Villa now. When I raise the Tottenham issue with it, Villa fans don't particularly like it, but Villa has a real history of integration going back almost 50 years now of the working classes. So there are many West Indian, many Sikh and Hindu supporters, Pakistani supporters, but we've been together for almost 3 generations now.
And yet it was Big Ron, one of your managers, who, in fact, that is a really interesting example, right? Because sort of, for people who don't know, Ron Atkinson was caught, I think, making a off microphone remark using the N word and whatever, and he was one of the people who gave black players their first chance. There's no question in my mind that he's not a dyed in the wool.
There's no question about that.
No, but in much the same way that years ago there was a woman on Big Brother who used the N word, right? But only because she thought she was getting friendly with this black contestant, and she used it in a what she thought was a non-offensive way, right? And that is the parallels with the Spurs fans using the Y word are exactly are there. That woman thought she wasn't using it deliberately to cause offence. Neither was Ron Atkinson. Was just being stupid. But there's no way he's a racist. But
he was using it in anger, and he resorted to the most ridiculous slur, and he needed to understand that you cannot say that under any circumstances.
Yes, Exactly, but that's exactly the same with the Y word. Under any circumstances, it should be the byword. So those people are not setting out to deliberately cause offence. I'm not saying that that all Tottenham fans have died in the war Nazis. I know they're not, and I know their reasons for doing it. But in exactly the same way that woman on Big Brother, she thought she was actually being friendly. She thought she was bonding with this black girl who, I don't know if you remember it, but when the white girl said it, the black girl looked really shocked and she was offended, and the girl got thrown off. So that's a perfect parallel where somebody's using a word, doesn't mean to cause offence, in fact thinks they're doing something positive, and as I say, bonding, but actually caused deep offence and got thrown off a TV show. Similarly with Ron Atkinson, he used it in a stupid way. I think at the time words like that were more prevalent in football, but he lost his job, and I don't think has been seen very much on television or heard at all since. But that's two examples of people using a word without deliberate intent to cause offence, who suffered for consequences. And it's exactly the same for Spurs fans. You have to allow for that sort of rivalry and for people to vent in that way. You can't not allow that, because that really would be destroying the heart and soul of football.
It would turn into a TV game.
Yeah, it would be ridiculous. I mean, I shout and scream, and you shout at the ref, you shout at other opposing players, because it's about passion. And obviously, we're biased as a Chelsea fan. If one of my players goes down in the box and I think it's a penalty and the referee doesn't give it, I'm hurling abuse at the referee and all the rest of it, but not in a, hopefully. It might not be particularly pleasant, but hopefully I'm doing it I know I'm not doing it in a racist, sexist way, but I'm still venting. I'm still, that's the passion. It's going to boil over, and you can't put a lid on that. No. That's why it is so difficult for people. That's why, unfortunately, that's why it's going to take such a long time to change, because sometimes when people are in that state of heightened excitement and passion, that sort of abuse just kind of tumbles out almost subconsciously, and that's not to defend it at all, which is exactly why you have to raise people's awareness of it and actually say, look, yeah, you can shout and scream and have passion, all the rest of it, but just maybe stop and think for 1 minute before you do.
Well, that's it for today. Don't forget the New State Solution podcast also on this feed, and thank you for giving generously via patreon.com/Jonny Gould. See you soon.